Welcome back to Celebrity Radio. It's Alex Belfield talking to some of my favourite people and some of the country's biggest stars, and we've got one for you today. Bernie Clifton, how are you?
Well, I think the main thing to do is to be confident and not to be, if you're being interviewed, not to be at all nervous. Because I think nerves can actually affect one's performance. Which reminds me, there's somebody I must have to ring.
You've got to put your cup of tea down because I'm obviously making you on edge.
That's not a cup of tea. That's my ceramic hip that I've just had fitted. It's I actually I'm in great shape, Alex. And have you noticed that too much tea can affect your eyesight?
Are you sure it's tea?
Yeah.
Bernie, how are you?
I'm very well considering. For my age and weight, leaning into the wind, I have got no major problems. I've got lots of minor ones, but you don't want to hear those.
Is it amazing being you? I mean, to have a career in show business is one thing, but to survive and still be relevant and contemporary and here and doing it is extraordinary.
Survive is a very important word. In fact, it's probably the most fitting word that one could latch onto when you're talking about my career. To survive my grandfather survived the Battle of the Somme. And his father, he survived. He was in the Battle of the Little Bighorn, with General Custer. Well, he wasn't actually in the battle. He was killed, but he was camping in the next field. He went round to complain about the noise. I come from a family of survivors. Yeah, we've survived since the day I was born. Actually, I was actually christened Friday Clifton because my dad looked at me and said to me, "Mum, I think we ought to call it a day." Thank you, Les Dawson.
Is it great that you can walk in a room? I mean, I've just seen you today. We're here at a hotel just outside Chesterfield.
Well, you call it a hotel. I think the thing is, the sign at the top, the S has fallen down. It's actually a hostel. It's a hostel for the homeless people in this area because there's been a bit of a fracas in the last few days. The council organised a free bus service for the homeless, but nobody knew where to get off, which was very unfortunate. And I actually... I hope that I'm in an environment, and I hope I'm at a time in my life when I can almost do what I want, Alex. People. I think younger people are very tolerant now of the aged. I think they see us with a more sort of measured eye than maybe I treated old people when I was a youngster.
Well, not only that, we have a great respect, especially for people like you in the business, because quite honestly, there aren't many of you left. On Friday, I spoke to Ken Dodd, and we were talking about the fact that there really aren't many of you who did that sort of vaudeville cabaret entertainment style that are still doing it. You're one of a dying breed, which is incredible to learn from and see, because there aren't many people we can go and learn.
You mean you started the conversation with Ken Dodd on Friday last and finished it on Tuesday morning? That's what I heard.
It was something like that.
The governor, my hero, my lord and master, he, to me, is the epitome of what this business is all about. A man like myself who would be proud to be called an end-of-the-pier comedian, because that is where the best of times were had, with 3 generations of family being entertained and laughing royally. And one thing I would say, just very quickly, that's one of the most golden moments of my career is to perform on stage and see 3 generations, to see children laughing at something their parents can laugh at. That's we're a lucky bunch.
I must have seen you hundreds of times over the years. I last saw you in Nottingham at a tribute show, and what you do is so brilliant because it's sort of double layered. You've got the young kids who can watch you and the bird. How do we describe that? What is that for a start? Let's start with that.
What is it? Well, I think the question is more why, isn't it? Never mind what or when or how. It's why does he bother? It's an ostrich. You can call it a duck if you like, because it does impressions, and it's deaf. It's just another wild, silly prop that when I was on a roll in the 70s, I was developing. Les Dawson, another hero, saw me, my very first TV show at the City Varieters in Leeds in 1971. Les Dawson was topping the bill, and he took me to one side and he left me there. In fact, I've just got out. They only found me when they were renovating. I was behind the wallpaper. And I was actually, I was trapped by the dado.
By the what?
Yes, exactly. That's what I told the nurse. And it was, I went for an annual checkup. Then again, my eyes, I should have spelt annual. There was only one N in it. And Les said to me all those years ago, he said, "You're okay," he said, "but you're just doing what 100 other comics. Why don't you find a style that is you?" He said, "What do you love doing?" I said, "Well, I love working. I love visual comedy. I love mucking about with props and things." And he said, "Well, go out and be a visual comic, be a prop comic." And I did. I took him at his word, Alex. And the following day, this is true, I was in Chesterfield in the Oxfam shop. In the window had a full-size hearth rug lion skin. And I went in and bought it, and I pulled it round Chesterfield on a chain, shouting, "Heel, heel," hitting it with a chain. And this went on, and so by the mid-70s, I'd got a pair of biscuit tins to dance in. I got a 12-foot rubber shark I got from Shepperton Film Studios. I'd got this cat on my shoulder from a Halloween display. And then somebody mentioned the ostrich. I thought, why not? Let's breed one. And eventually we did. And I was kind of, who'd have thought that at that time it would have turned into what it did turn into? Because it's been a label for me, a happy label, I must say.
And again, what you managed to do through that is create an act that was multi-generational. And as you say, the kids could watch it and get something out of it. And then the gags at another level. Did you always want to be a family entertainer? Was there ever a Roy Chubby Brown in you desperate to get out?
Well, I was actually, the first gig I ever did as a comedian was a stag. It was a stag do. I was selling vacuum cleaners door to door. Which was awkward, knocking on the door, because most of the people I was selling to, they lived in tents. Nobody could hear me. And but so anyway, I actually got this job. I rang the agent up, and I was a boy singer. I was just come out of the RAF, and I was a singer, pub singer. Johnny Mathis, Victor Bono, Sinatra. And I said, anything? He said, "Oh, there's a job just come in tonight, perfect for you." He said, "It's a tennis club. It's at the Earl of Doncaster Hotel in Doncaster, and they want you there about 8 o'clock. They have dinner, and it'll be lovely." So I turned up. I said, "Can I see the organiser? What's your name?" It's a guy who was about 6 foot wide, built like a brick Shinto outhouse. And he said, "Oh, you turn." And I went, "He doesn't look like a tennis player." And the guy had sold me as a stag comic to a rugby club stag do.
Right.
And I was screwed. So I went down, I sat on the toilet with my pen, and I wrote every blue gag that I'd remembered from my RAF days, went up and performed it. And that was my first ever professional gig, £4 less commission, as a stag comic. So, but not really. I always tried to work on the tenet that if my Auntie Nora was alive, would she like this? Or maybe she wouldn't mind as long as she didn't understand it. But at that time, I mean, I loved the Chubby Browns and the Mannings and all the other naughty comics. Great stand-up, great attack, great, very aggressive comedy. But I could never fill their shoes.
And as men, actually really nice guys.
Absolutely. And if you ever found out that people that knew Bernard closely, what a generous man, and gave so much of his time to charity, but of course he didn't want that to emerge. Maybe he was being modest, or maybe it would be bad for his image. He was the pantomime baddie, wasn't he? People loved to think, "Ooh, he's very naughty, our Bernard." But what a joke teller. I don't know if there's ever been a better. Like Max Miller. Max Miller, in his time, what a joke teller. Manning was the same. Chubby Brown. You watch those guys, you may not like the material, but the talent for getting a gag over, I think is unrivaled.
I had a very unfortunate incident with Bernard about a year before he died, where he invited me to his home to do a live story interview, and he sat in his underpants. I'm glad you didn't do that today.
Funnily enough, yeah, only because I've got those, remember the string underpants and vest? Yeah, well, my underwear at the moment is in the car. I've just bought some Sprouts wholesale. And obviously, so I can't wear them for at least an hour or two.
And there was an unfortunate incident with some water in the car, but we better not talk about that.
I don't mind. No, I was multitasking. I saw you in the car park. I waved at you from a distant, funny wave, telling you I'd got 2 minutes, and then on the phone trying to decant a quantity of water into a smaller bottle, and promptly, it's all day. It's gone. It's down my trouser leg. And that matron is the case for the defence. She's promised me a bed near the window.
It's a shame, isn't it?
It is a shame, yeah.
You know, at this point, what's interesting about your life and career is that you are so loved within the business and have such respect. I can't expect you to comment on that, but I wonder for you being here now, whether you view it differently and the people you've worked with, because there is a love for you, isn't there, amongst young comics? And do you get to see that, or do you know about that?
No, I'm not really aware. I'm not quite sure and as what... how they regard me, because I'm a bit of a dinosaur, but maybe it's because if there is any form of liking or, dare I say, I wouldn't say respect, but tolerance perhaps, it's because I was there during their formative years. You know, when they were teenagers, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and getting a sniff for the business, I was that ridiculous guy running around on the back of a duck, which because it's visually very powerful, maybe I think in those years, interestingly, I was on The Voice in January, and Ricky Wilson, when he was 6, was scared to death with me. I'm on the Ostrich and I ran at him. He was in an audience and he was petrified. But he said it kind of formed his childhood. It was a powerful, iconic image of this cartoon character, if you like, but in the flesh. So maybe that's got a lot to do with, I mean, when I look back at my comedy heroes, and I think of Laurel and Hardy, I think of the Marx Brothers, Abbott and Costello, they were, and then of course Doddy, when I was obviously a bit older, and Cooper. They mean a lot because you're forming opinions, and they're indelible, aren't they? They're on your mind forever.
And again, I don't want to use a title from Gypsy, but you got to have a gimmick, and you did, and that's why people remember you.
Big gimmick, yeah. I mean, who'd have thought? When coming through the ranks in the clubs back in the 60s and the 70s, with a day job, selling vacuum cleaners door to door, and just surviving and being virtually going and being booked as bingo fodder. 3 songs bingo, 3 songs bingo, 3 songs bingo, and then the comedy crept in, and then the singing took a back seat, and as the comedy improved or sort of expanded, it's a long journey, isn't it? It's a long journey. So my basic bottom line feeling is one of privilege that I'm still around. They said to me last week at Radio Sheffield, every time somebody dies, we ring you. Who are we going to ring when you go? Which is, that's what friends are for, isn't it?
And what do you want written on your gravestone? Well, we're being morbid, because it's interesting. Are you a comedian or are you a singer? Because the singing is really at your heart, but the comedian stuff is what we love you for.
Yeah, I think it's that wonderful hackneyed term, really, that I would love. Entertainer. I do George Thornberry. Entertainer. Yeah, I think I am one. Barry Cryer always said that I spun off the time warp 20 years too late. I should have been immersed in variety and music hall, but I think I've got echoes of variety in my DNA somehow. In fact, you probably don't know, there's no way you would know, but my mother and father actually had a Romany act, and my dad used to play gypsy violin, and my mother used to go around the audience selling pegs. And it was, I think it was a matinee at the Apothecaries Hall in Dumfries. Business was bad. On the Monday matinee, they shot a stag in the circle. And my mother, who was heavily pregnant with me, actually gave birth to me during the matinee performance. Well, do you know, it went down so well, they kept it in the act.
How do you think of these stories? It's extraordinary.
it went down so well. Now that material is gleaned from different sources. Mike Craig, my hero, Mike Craig, sadly no longer with us. Our Mike, he was an academic and a lover, an archivist of all like that comedy. And I think there was a comedian called Jimmy Day. There was maybe Albert Maudsley. All these people who had contributed lines to that routine that I begged, borrowed, stole, and amassed. And it's a wonderful. And I tell that story about my mum and dad having a Romany act, which garners people's attention. Oh, that's interesting, yeah. My dad played a gypsy violin, and my mother went, and then there's the stag in the circle. Shot. No, I don't know.
Well, pegs was the first bit when I thought, hang on a minute.
Imagine. And I think it's because it's the Apothecary's Hall in Dumfries, which is, can you imagine? It paints a picture. That's the wonderful thing. People like Les Dawson, off he'd go on these flights of fancy, and I worship the man. And he became... He was my mentor initially and became my long-term mentor over a number of years. We used to meet on these summertime specials, and he used to say to me, I didn't put you wrong with that visual comedy, did you? And I went, no, you didn't, mate. It was, I think at the time nobody could be bothered. I mean, I used to be on the road with a big, with a roadie, a pianist, my own sound equipment, the van full of props, the shark, the CO2 cylinders, all this rubbish that a stand-up comic would go, are you kidding? What do you need? They used to come in half an hour before the show, hang the suit up, say, I'm just going to the bar, I'll be back 10 minutes, and on they'd go. Whereas me, I'd be there at 2 in the afternoon. Did you ever come across a comic called Tom Menard? No. Another hero. Look him up. Tom, and worship Tom, and he was surreal. He was ahead of his time. He used to go in a club and he'd bring all the tools out of his car and he'd say to the poor concert secretary, where would be the best point to secure the tightrope, because I've got the seals. They're in the tank in the aquarium in the trailer, but I have to secure the tightrope. It's steel. I've got a 1/4-inch bit here. Do you have any roll plugs on the premises? And these poor people would go, "What is that?" Was Tom. So these people I've been privileged to grow up with. And sadly, they're no longer with us, but they're still in my heart.
Yeah, and what's amazing about this business, you can still find somebody new who's brilliant, who isn't famous. That's just the luck of the draw, isn't it, in the business? Some people make it and some people don't, and you did. And what's interesting now, most recently, the most amount of people got to see you on The Voice on the BBC, which was extraordinary. And I watch you on that too, singing The Impossible Dream. And I think it was a shock to people, even to people like me, to see how good you are at singing. And of course, that's led to this new album, The Voice of Bernie Clifton, The Impossible Dream, which is going to be out soon. Were you even surprised by the reaction you had? Because it was amazing to see how many people were surprised that you could sing that well.
The whole process was fantastic. I started having singing lessons about 5 years ago and was developing this voice. I was at the college in Manchester having proper classical training, and because I knew I had to. I thought I had something there that needed developing, and eventually I thought, now where am I going to show off to? There's no work as such. So I wrote off to The Voice under my real name, Bernard Quinn. Didn't tell my family, didn't tell my agent, didn't tell anybody, in case they said, do you think you ought to? So I went for it, passed 2 auditions, and at that point they said, oh, we like what you're doing, sit down and tell us about yourself. And I said, something you ought to know. I've got an alter ego to man sitting on a duck. And because they were youngsters, they'd no idea who I was, this elderly guy. Anyway, it got very interesting for them, I think, as a backstory, and for me as well. Come the day, as I, did my song, and the chairs didn't turn, which was disappointing. I was pretty gutted, But the reaction, initially from Ricky Wilson, as I told you, I meant a lot to Ricky in his childhood, and then the audience, and then the overall bounds from it has been fantastic. It's been amazing. One, initially of surprise, because nobody knew I had any kind of a singing voice, and B, perhaps the realisation that after 50, knocking on 60 years in the business, I'd produced this rabbit out of the hat. It's you could call it the mother of reinvention, if you like. Interestingly enough as well, Alex, I'm actually being booked now as a singer without any reference to the Ostrich, which is fantastic. Phil Williams said to me on Radio 5 Live, he said, you realise, don't you, to a certain percentage of the population below a certain age, if your name came up and they recognise your name, they would say, oh, that's that old singer off The Voice, with no knowledge of what's gone before, which is surreal, isn't it?
Yeah. Incredible. It is a risk. I've got friends in the West End who were leading ladies who went on there to audition and the chairs didn't turn, and I think there can be a backlash. I guess for you, and this is where age works to your benefit, you couldn't really lose because the exposure was beyond anything that you could achieve in the clubs numbers-wise, and people would see you for what you were and they loved you for that. Yeah. So I guess there was no professional risk because at this point you weren't wanting to get a gig in the West End or do a national arena tour, were you?
I think in that respect I felt pretty safe. People, as it grew, the momentum grew, people were still had a sharp intake of breath, looking after my interest. They felt to say, do you think you ought to? But it was too late. The deed was done by then. But I agree with you, because I was going out wearing a different jacket, as doing something I'd never seen before. I didn't think it was anything other than a win-win situation.
And I think it paid off beautifully, as we can hear in this new CD. And if anybody wants to hear you can just go on YouTube and put in Bernie Clifton. Sure, and
Clifton.co.uk, and the news, it will be out there. We're coming up with a start date, with a launch date from it. I'm working on my autobiography. It's like pulling teeth. I'm not the greatest. I'm not the greatest when it comes to discipline. And in any moment now, I'm celebrating my 80th birthday, which, how the hell did that happen? I can't believe it.
Just yesterday I was with Lionel Blair, and he's 81, and he said the same thing. Do you still view yourself as a 36-year-old?
Well, until I look in the mirror and see me dad, I've got the same. I think you get tired quicker. I think your mental and emotional energy takes more of a shake to get you up to speed. But I think what we're all suffering from in this business is some form of addiction, and nothing can be a substitute for a round of applause, can it? And to go into and to touch people's lives and just I did a dinner I stood up at a dinner last night and spoke without any props. I just rambled for about 20 minutes, and it wasn't easy because I got no props to fall back on. Props in every sense of the word. But nevertheless, towards the end, as I gained their confidence and it went rather well, I realised coming home that you are actually, it's another sniff of that thing that comes down, that essence from above that we're all partial to.
And in terms of the work, you are still busy and you are still working. It is tougher than it's ever been. And for people starting out at 25 who want to become Bernie Clifton, it's going to be a tough ride, isn't it? Because at least you had the clubs to begin and that sort of trajectory to get where you are today.
Yeah, but you know what? Max Bygrave said to me 40 years ago, and we were talking about different people I knew he'd grown up with. He said, you've got to love it. He said, you've got to love it so much that it will conquer all the disappointments. It'll get rid of the bitterness. You've got to keep wading through it and rationalise what you're doing is so ridiculous and such a joy, and that would perhaps make you realise how privileged you are to do what you're doing. And that really, I have to keep reminding myself. And I think, Alex, as I get older, I have to remind myself more often. Yeah. Because you've got, when you're young, you're doing your 1,000 miles a week, you've got energy, you've got all going for you. Suddenly, slightest moment, you think, I'll have another siesta this afternoon. That's 2 today. But when the dust settles, I'm just a lucky boy.
And when we look at those you got to work with, legends, the Dawsons, the Dodds, who was the one that really was the pinnacle where you thought, I've made it now?
Well, I think to share a stage with Les Dawson was brilliant. I did Ken Dodd's. I think he was 82. It was his sort of celebratory spot. I did a spot on his show at the Palladium about 8 years ago, and to tread the boards and to stand in the middle of that stage I did a double act with Ken Barlow, with William Roach.
I was there for that. I'd forgotten you were there.
Way. Yeah, well, that was Ken. And so to be in the company of the Kings, it's a fantastic. Growing up in St Helens and going around the pubs for £2 a night with Terry O'Connor with an act called the Two Terrys, who would have dreamed? I would never would have dreamed that. But it's a great. I'm just treasured, just privileged.
And still at it, still doing the radio show on BBC Sheffield.
BBC Radio Sheffield. It's live-ish. It goes out at the weekends. Great fun. It's a little panel show. It's like Mock the Week for the elderly, I tell them. And we have such a great time. 30 or 40 people in the studio. We'll do everything I ask them to do. What an audience. It's like a little club. We're travelling round and we get a couple of good guests every week. That's great fun. That keeps me active. Little odd gigs. We're doing something on Saturday at the Academy Theatre in Barnsley. It's a tribute to Paul Daniels. Paul had the date booked, and instead of cancelling it, we're all turning up and we're giving the proceeds to his charity, to Brain Tumour Charity. So there's that's something positive. So if I keep repeating the phrase, I'm a lucky boy, it's because it's true.
Yeah, and we were lucky to have you too. I mean, the memories that you gave people like me, we'll never forget. And the joy you've given over the years and the fun and the laughs. It's a wonderful act, and congratulations. The voice of Bernie Clifton is the new CD, The Impossible Dream, is out shortly. Thank you so much for your time.
Is the check in the post?
It is indeed. It's second class, so I don't know when it'll arrive.
Second class. That reminds me of my act.